Hi, here is a video on drawing and specifically really focusing in on copying accurately some kind of shape. I feel like this is one of those oft overlooked subjects, and I know in my own drawing I keep trying to figure out how to get this down better and quicker. So this is just a little handout I made that I do provide students, and it has down here the steps that I'm talking about. And what I'm going to be doing is sort of a series of more and more complex shapes and learning how to copy shapes, replicate shapes to different sizes, etc. But for now, all I'm going to do is take the most basic shape, these rectangles, and I'm going to copy, replicate them in a fashion called one-to-one, and that means I'll be using the information that's already here to create another version of it. Where'd you come from? In at the same overall dimensions, so there won't be any sizing up or sizing down. So the first thing I'm going to do is what I like to call my tic-tac-toe guides. A couple things about all the lines we're going to be making here. All of these are going to be guide lines. So I really want to emphasize thinking of these as not lines that I'm drawing so much as just creating marks and indications that are going to help me get to that point. More on that later, maybe. Oh, much later. But anyways, so tic-tac-toe guides. And then I'm going to extend what is referred to as a plumb line, which has to do with whatever is straight vertical. And I'm also going to extend some level guidelines. These are still guidelines, which I think I just blabbed about. These are all light and sketchy. And once I've done that, I am going to establish one of the edges, the top edge in this case, of my my new rectangle that I'm replicating. Cloning. Maybe it could be cloning. Nah, that's a little too weird. And then what I'm going to do is this technique that I'm calling tip to thumb. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the tip of my pencil and the distance from that to my thumb nail. I know this camera angle is not going to be, it will make more sense in a different angle probably, but what I'm going to do is determine that information, and I'm going to transfer that information to my new rectangle. In this case, I'm needing to transfer height information. The plumb guidelines, I'm using the width, the existing width to set up my guides with just these plumb lines. And then I'm going to need to figure out the height, which is what I just did, but I'll show that again. So there I have a new rectangle that I've copied, same dimensions, directly below, you might call plumb. And now I'm going to do a similar thing in a level fashion to the right, or it could certainly be to the left, but I'm going to go to the right. So I'm at the stage where I'm going to establish one of the edges. And this, where I establish this is mostly arbitrary. Just that's where I decide I feel like placing my rectangle. And for the level one, I'm going to need to know width information. At this point, when I'm measuring, I'm training my eye on the spot where I think the mark is going to go. I'm going to come back and double check. And that's pretty close, especially for demonstration purposes. Let's do that again. First, I'm going to establish my tic-tac-toe guides, and the reason I use that term is that it's somewhat visually looks like what a tic-tac-toe game might be set up like, and the point being, the main point is that having these extra overlaps is going to be really helpful. The main thing I'm after is just this rectangular shape in the middle. So let's see, once again I'm going to extend some plumb lines, guidelines. Let's finish this one up before doing the level one. So I want to establish the placement. I could just as easily say, you know, I think I want the bottom right there. And then from there I'm going to need to know height information relative to that. Seems pretty close. Let's extend one out to the right. Some level guides. That's those. Maybe I'll do a similar thing and establish the right edge. It's a little bit easier to, with this awkward little pencil grip of the tip to the thumb, it's a little bit easier to try to measure and make a little mark, although I didn't do it great there. I do like to, it is a good practice to just sort of, once you've made the mark, to double and triple check. And I think I could adjust it even a touch more. Just establishing it's right about there. And that's my width information, so I'm going to make my final edge there. So I copied this guy, That one. That one. That one. I'm going to do one more here and then burp. Wow. That was fun. Tic-tac-toe. Eventually the tic-tac-toe might start to get so big that it may just make more sense to kind of do crosshairs to indicate rectangular points, outer perimeter. And this rectangle will be representing what is going to eventually be, it's called the notional space, or the bounding box around the object. But that's will be in subsequent. So once again, I'm going to extend some plumb lines. Some level lines. I'm going to establish placement with my first edge. Let's take a measurement for the height. Indicate that with a little guide mark, and then draw a line. These are still sort of just guides. It's the guide for my bottom edge. Let's see. Let's establish the left edge of this next one. So that is a good, no-nonsense way of making sure that you at least know how to copy the shape of something in a way that's very close to the source, obviously. The trickier, it's critical, in my humble opinion, to learn and understand these techniques in a simple fashion before you start applying them in a more advanced way. You could certainly look at this exercise video and say to yourself, oh, I can do that. That's just, I'm just going to, I don't need to learn this sort of technique. And that may well be good and true, but eventually, when you're trying to draw very involved things, is when these techniques need to be sort of instinctive and something you don't even have to think about. I'm doing one more. And obviously, eventually, we're going to be copying shapes in different larger overall dimensions, scaling up or scaling down, as well as drawing something from a source not right next to that. So being able to gather all the information from your source material and transferring that is a combination of a lot of different little skills. And so being able to manage them in a way that is easy to practice, I have found to be extremely helpful. So check that out. I would say you can certainly just, oh, I do want to say, especially if something is feeling off, what do I do? I do want to make sure I come back. Something is not seeming right for some reason. I want to use my pencil, which I know is straight, as well as the edges of my paper, which I know is straight. And I want to check to see if indeed this line is going straight down. If this line is going straight down, sometimes it'll curve off to one side and you won't sort of realize it. But you'll know that something doesn't seem quite right. So all these straight lines for this rectangle that are already here are also going to just help you gauge. And then lastly, just sort of double checking if something doesn't seem quite right, double checking your heights and widths. So that's that. I'm going to do some more complicated stuff, and hopefully that will be that much easier if you get this idea down. Okay.